Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 5th season, we are looking at Joe Johnston's 2011 film Captain America, The First Avenger. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright, and I'm excited to talk about people named after fabric tonight.
Today we're talking about minute 121, which begins with 11 comp sequence supervisors and ends with visual effects by method. It sounds like...
They pretend they're somehow trying to embody visual effects.
No, it just it sounds like the new hairstylist method.
Method. You have to whisper it.
All right. Method. Anyway, joining us on the show today and all week, it's Eric Deutsch from Escape from New York Minute and Flash Gordon Minute. Hello, Eric.
Eric.
Hello. So great to be back. When I heard Method, it just made me, as a Wu-Tang fan think of Method Man, who sometimes just goes by Meth or Method. So that's what popped in my head.
That's right. So these were people who were doing visual effects, and he was in proximity. They were
exactly.
Visual effects by method. Yeah, no, that's actually better. I appreciate that. It's now headcanon, and we're moving on.
Sounds good. So we're talking credits. Eric, I know this was not your pick for minutes.
Tell the whole story, Andy.
So there's a little story. All right, fine. So I was going to, early on in the season, I had Eric, I got confirmation from him. He was good. He wanted to get some minutes on the show. And then I proceeded to get, emails out to everybody, what minutes and everything. And I completely forgot to include Eric in that email. And it wasn't until all the minutes were taken and I was looking through it and I was starting to get everything ready for next season. And I realized, wait a minute, Eric never was on the show.
And so, somehow in your head, did you blame Eric at that moment? You said, why didn't Eric ever respond to me?
I never would blame Eric, but I probably blamed you, Pete.
I'll take it.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, I reached out to Eric and I said, dude, I'm so sorry. I'm awfully embarrassed about this. By any chance, would you like to have 5 minutes of credits at the end of the film? I promise you can have first pick for the Avengers. And Eric was kind enough to forgive me and took the deal. So here we are.
Oh, I didn't say I forgive you. I didn't say that.
Okay. Damn it. I thought I could slip that in. But anyway, we're going to try making this as fun as we can, which we like to do with the credits. And then, of course, we've got a little bonus, a little juicy stuff at the end of this one. So we'll talk about that as well. But right now we're talking about minute 121, and we are pretty much in a minute full of visual effects. Lots of visual effects companies in here. And, as I was watching this, first of all, Eric, let's get a sense from you. What do you think of the visual effects in general? Are there some that work for you, some that don't? In general, do you like the visual effects in this film?
Yeah, there were 3 specific visual effects items that I thought of, since literally this entire minute is just visual effects credits. I really like Hydra's and the Red Skull's disintegration guns. I think that's a very good effect whenever those are used, especially the scene when he kills the several German officers. I like when the Red Skull grabs the Cosmic Cube at the end and disintegrates, or is transported off to a different planet, as we find out many years later. I thought that was very well done.
Okay.
And the final, Steve flying the plane in the end, the final approach of the plane, seeing the water, seeing the ice. I thought that I really liked that too. Those are the 3 things that really stood out for me.
What are your thoughts on Skinny Steve?
I think that it was very good for the year that it came out. I'm sure they could do a slightly better job now. However, what is this, 10 years later, 11 years later or something. But I think I remember at the time seeing it and thinking, you know what? I buy it. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah. I think there's been a lot of fluctuation with it. I think for the most part, people think that they did a pretty good job with it, albeit there are a few shots in there that are questionable. And I think that's kind of where I land for sure.
Those are the ones where Haley Atwell is playing the part of Gandalf.
Exactly.
In those forced perspective shots.
In the car.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're doing CGI to create something human as opposed to something not human, there's always going to be some uncanny valley there.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is they jump through some extraordinary digital hoops to make a character that is believable. So even if the bar is set at merely believable, it's amazing. Like, it's amazing the stuff they're able to do, these artists. And so it's extraordinary work.
And as we often like to call out, any issues we have with the visual effects, it's not at the fault of the visual effects artists doing the work. We know that they are overworked often, put on very, very rigorous schedules to get the work done. And, cranking out stuff for people who are making a lot of decision changes and everything. And so, I think they're doing largely good work, as essentially the world of visual effects is making stuff up as you go along all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The first company in the credits that we're talking about is Double Negative. They were the lead vendor for the film and worked very closely with the team. They did 630 visual effects shots in the film, which I was like, oh, that seems like a lot. I didn't count shots, but I'm guessing that they were, I don't know. I mean, how many shots are roughly in a film? Like over 1,000, I would say, right?
Yeah.
I have to Google this now. How many shots?
Well, and I think, what did Avatar? I think they started with 3,300 and ended up in the not theatrical, but the sort of final round. I was listening to
you mean like
interview with.
Are you talking about the new one or the first one?
Yeah, the new one. I was just listening to a Cameron interview, and he said we're still cutting, and we're at about 1,800. So I think they had a long way to go, but that seems like a lot of shots.
Well, and that's a 3-hour plus film. So 2 hours, say 1,200 shots, somewhere in that range. So, I mean, that's like half of the movie they essentially were working on, that's touching a lot to kind of bring this to life. So it's pretty impressive.
Well, and considering this is sort of one of the more grounded MCU movies, it's probably on the lower end of visual effects shots for an MCU movie, I would assume.
True. And I'm sure as we watch the credits over the course of the next several phases, I think we'll see these blocks of names grow larger and larger and larger with all the different people working for the visual effects companies. I did count. I was curious with the visual effects. Okay, lead vendor, how many credits did they end up getting in this list here? And it's roughly about 250 credits. I did it a couple times and I got a different number every time because it's a lot of names. It's really a lot of names trying to count on a screen. But I think it's around 250. And that's definitely more people credited than any of the others. I was trying to find some information on each of these companies to figure out, okay, they're the lead vendor. Great. They did 630 shots. Great. But what did they do? And so I tried doing that for as many of these as I could find. And so as we talk through this, I just want to get a sense from you the specific effects for what they did. So Double Negative, it says the primary challenge for them was to design and build the series of vehicles used by the evil Hydra unit led by Captain America's nemesis Red Skull. So they were essentially doing the Land Cruiser, the Triebflugel, the Podfighter, the Suborbital Bomber, Zola's Train, and Schmidt's Mercedes. So they did all of the vehicle work. They also did set extensions of the Hydra factory and environment builds for the hangar and runway, the Alpine Mountains for the train and Arctic crash scenes, the cloud environment for the Podfighter chase, the imaging of the cube power and the death effect, and the replacement shots for Captain America's shield. That's a lot of stuff that they were covering.
Yeah.
With the 250 people that roughly names there, I mean, I'm assuming that's every employee at that company, probably, right? I mean, how big could one company be?
Yeah, like how many films are they taking on concurrently?
Yeah.
Well,
right.
I think what happens with a lot of these companies is, there's probably a core. Like if we looked at the credits here, and I don't have the specific, like at the top of the credits where it's like their producers, like their coordinators, the main people, that's probably largely the bulk of who they have as employees. And then once you get to the big blocks of names, a lot of those are people who are probably hired on just for this film. And so they're an employee of the company just for this film. And as soon as the movie ends, they're off looking for their next gig, just like any other kind of freelance work. My guess is that's how a lot of these people are working.
In theory, could a freelancer be hired by a company, work on it for whatever shot they have, that ends, and then be hired by a different company to work on a different shot in the movie, and their name would appear twice in the credits under both companies?
Oh, that's interesting.
That is interesting.
I don't know, but just to back up a little data, Double Negative has as of today has 6,888 employees. It's a $300 million a year company. So
there you go.
Bigger than I don't know how big it was then, but it is, it's a sizable organization. Having 250 people in the credits, they're taking on concurrent films.
Does it? Well, yeah, and actually, now that you say that, I'm looking to see how many offices they have. It looks like they have 10 offices, so they are all over the place.
Yeah,
very, very, very big organization.
Yeah.
So I guess it makes sense that they're a lead vendor for a project like this. They have the staff to handle it.
Yeah.
And, my sense is a lot of companies like this likely have, 10 different places around the world. I mean, when I'm looking at the list, it's like London, Vancouver, Mumbai, LA, Chennai, Montreal, Mohali, Bangalore, Toronto, Sydney. Probably.
What's crazy, that's where they make movies.
Well, it's probably LA, right? But it's probably because they can then have essentially stuff going on around the clock. And, a particular thing can be done in one time zone, passed off to the next time zone, and kind of, work around the clock like that so things get done quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does let me ask a sidebar question.
Oh, okay.
As I'm looking at the digital compositor at Double Negative, the roto and prep artist, I'd like to introduce you to Daniel Leatherdale. Now, you know me. I like to know where names come from, but not this one. I just got to thinking, I wonder how many people are named after fabrics. And so I went on a little search. Do you, first of all, could either of you gentlemen actually name the 12 principal types of fabric? How many could you get?
Cotton?
Hey, that's number 2.
All right.
Silk?
That's one. Yeah, it's down the list.
I mean, are we doing like synthetic too, or are we just talking about?
That's listed as one.
Synthetic is just
type.
one by itself.
Synthetic is just one. Yeah. So there are 11 other principal types of fabric.
Wool?
Yep.
So how do we do? Wool, silk, cotton, you have wool, synthetic.
Wool, silk, synthetics.
Is satin synthetic, or is that real? I don't even know.
Satin is a fabric. It is not made from fiber. It's actually one of the 3 major textile weaves, and is made when every strand is well knitted. Originally made from silk, now it's made from polyester, wool, and cotton. It is not in and of itself a fabric, but it is a resultant fabric. So it's part of the 12.
Wow.
We had silk, you had synthetics, you had wool.
We had wool, cotton.
You didn't have the big V, you know what I mean, velvet.
Beautiful.
Silk, satin, linen. You didn't have linen.
I hate linen.
It's one of the oldest materials known to humankind, made from natural fibers. Leather. We've just mentioned how excited I get about leather. Lace is listed as its own type of fabric.
Weird.
Denim. We all wear jeans. Crepe is a fabric. Who knew? I thought you just ate them.
Crepe.
Cotton. And the number 1 on the list is a sheer, lightweight, plain woven fabric made from twisted yarn that gives a slightly rough feel. It's called chiffon.
Oh.
Chiffon.
When you say number 1, though, it's not number 1.
It's number 1 on this list of 12 from.
Okay, but it's not like this is the number 1, because I'm like, like, where is chiffon in my life?
Number 1 alphabetically? I mean, what is that?
Yeah,
number
right.
1?
Right. My listeners to this show have voted, and that means me later when I listen to it. And so now I ask the question, now that you've had the 12, how many of those do you think are named people on the credits list? How many people you think are named after one of the fabrics in the principal 12? Do we
Well, we
have
have
a
leather.
John synthetic?
No, there's no synthetic. But chiffon, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a chiffon.
Okay.
I will say that there is a last name Satin, so I'll guess that someone might have had the last name Satin, because I know there used to be a Met named Josh Satin, so that is a legitimate last name.
Interesting.
Okay. Wool, I don't know if there's a wool.
Cotton's a last name.
Yeah,
Joseph Cotton.
Yeah, right.
Great actor could be Cotton.
That's right. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put you out of your misery because this bit is not that impressive when you come down to the real punchline here. We do have a stereoscopic depth artist named Treya Cotton. Treya Cotton. So there's the one. I did mention we have Leather, which was Leatherdale. Was Daniel Leatherdale.
So his history is he's actually from the town where they make leather.
But Andy, I can do you one better, and this is going to really excite you because I know how much you like this kind of stuff. Leatherdale is only one. Charlotte Leatherland.
Oh,
Leatherland.
Oh.
Yes, she's from the land that is much bigger than Leatherdale. Charlotte Leatherland is the assistant art director, and isn't that fantastic? And I'm sad to say, out of this massive list of people in the entire credits, not even just this minute, those are the only three people named after fabrics.
Wow.
You only know that kind of stuff from this show. So
this is where you learn that. Yeah.
There you have it. But you can bet we're going to be doing this again for the Avengers. Oh yes, we will. Chiffon, I'm coming for you, rotoscope artist.
The people must have it.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, the next company on the list is Lola VFX. Now, Double Negative had 250 people who worked on this film. Lola has only 30. So from, a company that had 250, the lead vendor, the rest of them all are, 30 or less pretty much. So it's quite the drop. I was surprised. I mean, I guess it makes sense in some way to have it, the lead obviously is the biggest, but then all of these other ones to be so small was a bit of a surprise. But one thing I did learn is that when you have credits, like when a company gets, like Lola has 30 credits, it doesn't mean that they only had 30 people work on the film. It's just in their contract, they had a deal that said, okay, you can have, you're going to do these credits. This is how much, we're going to pay you to do them, and we'll give you 30 credits. And then you have to decide who are those 30 people that you want credited. And so sometimes it's like, that's why some people end up not getting credited. And sometimes it's like, that's why all these random accountants and stuff are getting credited, because they only had 26 people working on it. Well, let's give it to Margie. And so that's why, with all of these, they're very like 30 credits, 30 credits, 30 credits, 20 credits, etc.
Well, what's interesting about Lola VFX, even with their diminutive percentage of the staff, they did some very important work on the film and in the Marvel universe. They do de-aging, and
yes.
they did the little cap, and we'll talk about him again when we get to Michael Douglas and Ant-Man and Vision, and they're in charge of the character-driven effects.
Yes. And something else we brought up quite a bit, they also did Armie Hammer twinning him for Social Network, and they did the work in Benjamin Button also with Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett. So very big company, not a lot of people credited, but going back to...
It looks like they only have 3 locations compared to the 9,000 locations of Double Negative.
Right. Next up, we have Framestore. Now, Framestore had 21 credits. They worked on 80 shots in the film, and their specific focus was working on Red Skull. That was their primary job. What's interesting is that they were actually, the filmmakers were trying to do everything with Red Skull 2D, like they're actually, with mask and everything. But they did realize at some point that they were going to have to create a 3D version of the head. And I didn't realize this watching the film, but most of the shots of him other than the nose. I mean, we know the nose was touched up, but they also did a lot of other cosmetic work on him. And so to that end, I'd say they did a great job, because I kind of thought it was just all mask.
Yeah.
What's your sense of Red Skull, Eric? Do you like the way Red Skull plays in the film?
Well, until 5 seconds ago, I thought it was mask. So I'm incredibly impressed.
Yeah.
I think he looks very good. Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess it was. I mean, the prosthetics. It's just modifying some of it, because there were some things like here's a quote. Hugo's performance. This is, I can't remember which scene they're talking about, but Hugo's performance pushed the mask into places which prosthetics couldn't anticipate, places where it was going to bulge in the wrong areas and make it look rubbery. On paper, all we had to do was make negative impressions into his skull, sculpting into his face to make it concave, trimming the odd bit of excess rubber here and there. It was hoped we could do it in 2D. But anyway, as they said, they did have to go in and modify all those little bubbles and bulges that were popping out as he was moving.
I mean, look, as the comic book character Red Skull, when you look at it, this obviously is not going to be an easy character to translate to live action.
Right, right.
It could look really stupid. I mean, the old Captain America movie from the 1990 or something, he looks horrible. So it's going to be a heavy lift, and I think they did a really good job.
Were you a reader of the Captain America comics?
I was never a huge reader of it, but I mean, over the years, I've sort of gone back and read a lot from the era when I was collecting comics. I didn't collect Captain America when I was a active comic book reader, but I was an Avengers reader, so at least I knew him from the Avengers. But over the years, I've gone back and read a lot of his runs from the 70s and 80s.
Okay, gotcha. So you've read some of it now, and you're a little more familiar.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, Red Skull, I mean, it's an interesting character in the comics, and it's anytime you have a character whose face is a skull, it becomes quite the challenge. So yeah, I thought they did a good job with it. We like him in these parts. The next company that is credited is the Senate. The Senate Visual Effects Limited. They had 30 credits also, and they did 180 shots. Their specific focus was environmental, and they also did some crowd replication, set extensions, and the ever important CG foot replacement.
Oh.
Pete, I can't remember. Were you on those episodes, Pete, when Chrissy and Nathan were on? We were talking about Cap running.
I was not, but I like to think that I was, because I was talking back to you while I was listening to those episodes in my car about the foot replacement. Yeah.
It's just really funny because they had those essentially weird looking Hobbit feet things that his stunt double was running and he was wearing as they were running around. And yeah, so they did go through and digitally replace all the feet. So you can thank the Senate for the fantastic footwork.
So funny.
Okay, the next company is Fuel VFX. Fuel VFX also had 30 credits and 120 shots. So Fuel VFX, they did things like the motorcycle chase and stuff. Which Pete, you're a big fan of the motorbike, right?
I just in general, I like watching bikes.
You liked the scene when they were chasing him through the forest.
Yeah, I did. I liked that scene. It was too short. They did all those bikes. That's what you're telling me. They did that scene.
They did all the effects work in it. They did digital doubles for the Hydra bikers, CG motorbikes when they were needed. They did the tank when it comes in and gets blown up. So they did a lot of that stuff. And then they went on to do all the stuff in the compound also, the flamethrowers, all that stuff, the blue bolt lasers. Extensions of prop trees, which things like that you don't normally think about because it works. I'm not looking at the trees to go, is that a real tree? So
yeah.
And then they did the shot in the water at the very end when Stark picks up the cube. So all that underwater Titanic looking footage.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they did a lot of that sort of stuff. They had worked on Thor also. I remember seeing their name in the credits there, but
they were on Iron Man 2 too.
Yeah. Do you like the motorcycle chase as it plays in this film, Eric?
Eric, don't pay attention to his tone.
He was leading the witness there.
It's unacceptable.
Yes, I do like it. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right, fine.
There's actually there's very little. This is one of my favorite Marvel movies. There's very little I would criticize about this movie, actually.
Well, just listen to this show and see if I change your tune. Okay, next up we have Trickster. They had 20 credits and over 115 shots that they worked on. They worked on the flashback sequence with Erskine when he's talking about Schmidt and Schmidt's descent into madness becoming the Red Skull. They also worked on the train sequence where Captain America loses Bucky, plus they did a few other random shots and stuff. I mean, the flashback sequence was an interesting one, and it definitely looked different than the rest of the film. I mean, looking back on it now, does it still play? Do you like the way that ended up kind of looking? The way that because it's like you got the bubbles, it's all like very scientific stuff kind of appearing over the images to make it look completely unreal.
Yeah, I like it. I feel like you're right. To me, it does stand out. But I almost think that sequence and Trickster's work on that sequence was effectively a demo reel for the rest of the work that they end up doing with Marvel. I mean, they're involved in everything now, and have done a lot of work, particularly big, glorious work in Guardians of the Galaxy and Spider-Man and Black Panther and all of the Falcon and Winter Soldier, Miss Marvel, all the TV stuff, Loki. They're all over. Their footprint is all over Marvel. So it feels like this was just teasing their way into these projects. Do
you like the flashback that we have, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, it's a comic book movie. It's okay for there to be comic booky elements in it.
It is just such a different thing. And here's a question that we were talking about during that particular scene. Because of the way it's shot, do you feel like there's a weird implication that Erskine is telling his own version of things?
Well, obviously, this goes into the societal aspect of when you have eyewitnesses talking about something, right?
Sure.
You can ask 3 different people something that all witnessed the same event, and they all give 3 different descriptions. It's how he remembers it. He's not, consciously looking to deceive or purposely leaving certain aspects out. It's his memory of the event is this. If that's not 100% accurate as how it happened, it's certainly possible, but in his mind, it is.
It's an interesting bit. It plays interestingly. I like that they did it. I think that it gives you that sense of that perspective. So I do actually like it quite a bit. Next up, we have look effects. They only had 12 credits, and they did almost 60 shots. They worked on 3 major sequences. They worked on the hover car early on in the film. They worked on the fight scene at the entrance to the Hydra Factory during the montage, the Hydra Factory in the montage. And they worked on the Howling Commandos wreaking havoc to Hydra across war-torn Europe. So basically a lot of the montage stuff. Are you a fan of montages, Eric? Do you like montages in films generally?
It has to work. I do think it worked in this movie because, they had to do a bit of a time jump there to get the part of the story they were into the later part while showing that he really indeed did become a hero and really formed a team with the Howling Commandos. So I think it works here. Doesn't always work.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that this company did montages, and does that mean, are they known for being a montage visual effects company?
Well, that's an interesting thing. I mean, I guess they're obviously just doing the effects for the montage, but still, like, that's a very specific thing because everything you're doing is kind of short,
right?
By nature, and so you're going to show this quick shot of a few explosions, and that's it, and then we move on to this other thing. So it is interesting that they are only doing that. So I don't know. I'm not sure how big the company is. I mean, it's
not anymore. They closed.
Oh, they closed
in 2014. Well. Yeah, all of their assets were acquired by Mass Market, another company. But yeah, they did. I mean, they were on Black Swan and Avatar, and obviously Captain America, and your favorite, The Muppet Movie.
Oh,
that's a good movie. Good movie.
Yep.
Interesting. Well, then we go from Look to Whiskey Tree. Whiskey Tree is, they were big in Thor. We talked about them quite a bit. They did all the stuff on Asgard. They only had 12 credits here, and so not a lot. I couldn't find anything specifically as to what they did on this film, so I'm not actually sure what they did. Not much. After that, we have Luma Pictures, who doesn't even get a credit. They only have the company name credited. Same thing with Matte Paintings by Matte World Digital. Now, this was interesting, and I don't know. I feel like I've seen them in credits before, and the thing that always stands out is they get to list their location, Matte World Digital, Marin County, California. And I'm always curious, like, why do they get to include where they are as part of their credit? Does that stand out to you at all as something that's like, wonder why they have that?
I don't think I even thought about that. Do the other ones say specifically where they are?
Nobody says that. That's why it's so peculiar. They always say the county, almost like they've included that in their name just so people know where they are or something.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
It looks like they do the remember those first minutes, Andy, when we were talking all about Brooklyn and the posters of Brooklyn and the walls and the streets? That's what they did. They decorated a digital 1940s Brooklyn. And they also did some work on the giant Hydra base where Cap runs up the tank and along the roof to get into the first bridge confrontation inside the building, which they did not do. But they did a lot of the 1940s Brooklyn and replaced all the posters and did all that art.
Ah, gotcha. I always loved matte paintings. I don't think I even knew what a matte painting was when I was young, but then I remember being just mesmerized when I saw behind the scenes pictures of movies where they would show these huge glass plates with somebody actually like painting on it that they would shoot through, and that would be the matte. And it kind of blew my mind that you could do that when you were making a movie. And I mean, obviously it was in a lot of stuff I loved as a kid, like the Star Wars movies and stuff like that. But then, I mean, even going farther back into, older films and stuff, it's just like, it's such an interesting technique. And when you get to see the art that the matte painters would create on those glass pieces, I mean, it's pretty astounding. I mean, is that something either of you that's ever caught your attention?
Yeah, actually, in Escape from New York.
Sure.
Talked a lot about that because actually James Cameron actually did some of the matte painting for that movie before he became James Cameron. And so they extended, since the movie was shot in St. Louis, it wasn't shot in New York, they filmed, what they could in the front, and then they had to add in the background stuff to make it look like New York City.
Wow. I forgot that he got his start doing that. And that's interesting because Joe Johnston, who directed this film, got his start doing effects and stuff with the Star Wars films and Lucas and Spielberg. So it's interesting. And even like David Fincher, he got his start working in some effects on Return of the Jedi. So I always find it interesting how some of these people get their start and make their way to where they do, After matte paintings, we're at Evil Eye Pictures, and then we have Rise, Visual Effects Studios, and Method. I couldn't find much on any of these places other than Method, and Method was involved in the title, like a lot of the stuff that we talked about when we were doing the propaganda images, Pete.
Yeah.
Method Design worked on all of that. And I believe they were Rocket Studio at one point. So anyway, those are the credits. Those are the companies that we're looking at in this particular film. I mean, it's interesting to kind of break it down by company and look at what they did, because I don't know, so often you just look at the film, but then you go, oh yeah, it's all these different companies, and then they have to work together. One company is doing we talked about Double Negative being the lead vendor, and then they pass stuff over to Look Effects, for example, and Look Effects has to take those shots and fit their effects into it and stuff. I mean, it's interesting, the process that they go through with all of this. I can't imagine the complexities the post-production supervising team has to do to navigate all of this,
The thing I like about doing this is just going through the sort of legacy of effects work that has come since this movie, like in the last 12 years. What have they been doing and where did they end up? And so many of them, it's like a gang of companies that have this expertise, and so they come back and do again and more and more and more. You look at Rise Effects, and Rise Effects is, their demo reel goes back and forth from Marvel to DC to Marvel to DC to television to big screen. They're on all those projects. One of their big upcoming ones that we've already talked about on another show is The Last of Us, not a Marvel show, but one that we're very, very much looking forward to as possibly a great game adaptation. It's fun to see that work come out of these companies and watch them grow. And it seems interesting to me that we've only stumbled on one that has gone out of business, that has been acquired. The rest of these seem to be doing the right thing with that sweet, sweet Marvel and DC money.
That's a good point, because what was it, Life of Pi, that was shortly after this. I mean, that was the big story because their effects team won Best Visual Effects right after the company had declared bankruptcy and shut down.
Right.
And so I can't remember, who is that? Rhythm and Hughes? Is that who that was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that's right.
And so, I mean, it's a very difficult industry. And so it's kind of amazing that at this point, we've only run into one that has shut down of all these.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So I have a few names. I don't want to take too much more time because I don't want these to be too long. Just a few names that I thought I'd call out. Possibly the shortest name in the entire list of credits. I know, Pete, you were asking before which was the longest name, and I think we pinned that down to somebody. But possibly the shortest name is Whiskey Tree's technical director, Va Ha.
That's 4?
2-syllable names, Va Ha.
Outstanding. Well, again, we now have a Leatherland and a Leatherdale, and now you know about Va Ha.
And now you know about Va
Ha. Our hats off to all of them for their work.
All of them. We have one nickname in this set of minutes. We like to call out the nicknames. And as we have done before, I'm going to have you two guess what this particular person's nickname might be. This is effects artist Terry Marriott. Any idea what Terry Marriott's nickname might be?
Hotel.
That would make sense.
Oh, please tell me it's not Hotel. Motor Inn.
Or Bonvoy would make perfect sense with Marriott. It's actually Super Mario. Where does that come from? Terry Marriott. I guess Marriott Mario.
Well, Marriott Mario.
Yeah. Wow. That's an interesting one to choose, to sit there and think, you know what? I want that to be in my credit for Captain America, the First Avenger. Super Mario.
We had one junior, no seniors or thirds, but we had match mover Ludwig Adassa Jr. And then there's one person who had a name that I thought was very fitting, not for the department they're in, but compositing artist Caroline Weidenhiller. What department do you think Caroline Weidenhiller would perhaps be more at home in? Weidenhiller.
Like, you're talking about like location scouting?
She looks something with outdoor visual effects or something.
Right, just something involving landscaping the production.
Right.
That was terrible. That was just terrible. I had to go there though. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
It's a minute of credits. Come on. All right. Well, I mean, that's a lot of technical stuff, special effects, a lot of interesting things there. But I don't have anything else unless you two have something else that you'd like to talk about in this particular minute.
I had one last point that I wanted to get in. All of these workers on visual effects, tying this back into something we talked about at the beginning of the episode about small Steve, large Steve. All these visual effects workers, and the movie does not actually show the actual transformation of small Steve into large Steve.
Oh. Would you like to have seen that? Like Hulk style?
Like the Hulk transformation that we get.
Yeah, like a Hulk transformation, sure.
You know, that's weird. I honestly that's never crossed my mind that I missed out on that until you just said that. And I'm like, they've shown plenty of transformations like that. Why is this one that they don't show?
Because he's not a monster.
I mean, it's straight out of a high school play, you know? You walk, the one guy walks in the pod and then the other one walks out.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it would be different with Captain America because you don't want to see Captain America, who is pure of everything, look gross at any given time. And you know his bones breaking and adjusting and his limbs stretching out, his muscles pulsating. That would be disgusting. Nobody wants to see Captain America do that. That's my pitch.
That's the version that has his eyes turn blue.
Yes, right.
Eric, it was actually scripted where when, there's a shot when he's getting like about to go through his transformation where he's got his eyes closed and the shot's right on his face and then his eyes open and he's looking right into the camera. That was scripted where his eyes are blue. There's like the blue, the whites of his eyes are all blue. Really glad they chose not to do that.
The whites of his eyes were blue?
That was the whole thing. His eyes like had gone all blue.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't mean just the iris, like the entire eyeball is blue.
Yeah, he was being pumped full of whatever the Vita rays were doing. It was bluing him up. It was very weird.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be some sort of a country of origin thing. Like in the original script, he was French, but he went through the Vita rays and now he's an American. Very powerful stuff. Very powerful.
Yeah, very strange. I'm really glad they chose not to go that route. It would have been really silly. But if they had, that's the version where you're showing him go through the transformation. I did have one last thing that only occurred to me because you brought it up a moment ago, Eric, and that was a person who's getting credited twice. And we do actually have somebody who does get credited twice in this minute. Leong Kit Wong gets credited once as a match mover and then again later as a roto/prep artist. So it happened at least once in this one. I don't know if I forgot to write down if it was the same company or not.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, because based on what you now told us about how each company only gets a certain amount of slots, does that mean if they were from the same company, that this person got their name twice and someone else at the company who worked on the movie did not get their name at all in the credits because this person insisted that their name appear twice?
Yeah, right.
That would be some major problems at the Christmas company party.
It's it's the Hunger Games. They just all have to knock each other off for the credit.
It just goes crazy. That's right. I'm looking right now. Okay, so Leon Kit Wong's first credit as match mover was with Double Negative. So if there's a company that has plenty of room for somebody to be credited twice, it is them. And again, okay, so it's both times with Double Negative. So yeah, I wonder if they just had the room and maybe at some point Leong had moved from one department to the other, so ended up getting credited in both places, or if somebody's name didn't get credited because Leong got in it twice. I don't know. But there it is. All right. Well, let's wrap this one up. So Eric, tell everybody where they can find your shows.
Sure. So I was the co-host of both Flash Gordon Minute and Escape from New York Minute. Those are both on any podcatcher that you use, and both are long since finished, so they're nice, easily able to be binged. And I do still maintain a presence of fan groups for both of them on Facebook as well, if you want to chat about the movie as well. We're still active there.
Fantastic. What are the Facebook groups called?
It is Flash Gordon's Minute Listener Vortex, and the Escape from New York Minute Brains Library, Escape from New York Minute listeners group.
Perfect. All right. Well, Eric, we'll be back with you tomorrow to talk about Minute 122. Some more credits. Should be fun. And Pete, thanks as always.
I hope we find out who actually wrote Star Spangled Man tomorrow, Andy.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Spread the News by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.